Know what you think and tell other people about us on social media. Podcasts from the BBC World Service are supported by advertising.
Before I start, I just want to let you know at the end of this episode, I'll be telling you about the amazing animations that we've made to go with the podcast, including one all about this episode. Honestly, you just have to see them. The information about where they are and how to find them coming up. Has this ever happened to you? You're sitting quietly at home or at work, and suddenly there's a loud thud on the window. And when you turn to look, all you can see is a fine dusty imprint of a bird that's flown directly into the glass. These imprints are often very beautiful, with the fine detail of the feathers clearly visible. But what looks like dust is actually powder, a substance that helps many birds protect new growing feathers. These collisions are not an occasional event. Ornithologists estimate that in the United States alone, more than 350 million birds die each year when they hit glass windows, walls, and other structures, making this one of the most significant threats to the lives of birds. Hi, I'm Patrick I, and welcome to 30 Animals That Made Us Smarter from the BBC World Service. The podcast that explores some of the amazing ways in which animals have inspired us and solved human challenges. If you've enjoyed the series so far, then you know what to do. Spread the word and drop us a rating telling us about your favourite parts of the show. And remember, we want your expertise too. What examples do you know about that could feature in our podcast? If anything comes to mind, please email us at 30animals@bbc.com, or you can contact us via our website, bbcworldservice.com/30animals. In this episode number 19, we'll be hearing how spider webs have inspired a glass to help reduce the number of potentially fatal collisions birds have with windows. And that has got to be good news. Although some birds collide into windows in the heat of a chase, most do so because they see a reflection of the trees and the sky in the glass, or because there's another window or mirror in the room, which to the bird looks like a way through. All types of glass can result in bird collisions, regardless of whether it's a window of a high-rise skyscraper or a residential home. The reflective and transparent characteristics of glass are dangerous for birds. Double-glazed windows tend to pose a greater risk than single-glazed because they produce clearer reflections. And these collisions can result in anything from concussion to internal injuries, which can be fatal. The risk of these collisions can be reduced by making the window glass more obviously visible to birds, for example by fixing an object to the outside of the glass to create an obstacle, or by sticking shapes and patterns to the glass to make it stand out. In many situations, though, these methods might not be desirable or even practical. But there might be another solution. And it's all thanks to the spider's web. Spiders' webs are one of those magical spectacles of nature. Growing up in England, one of the best things about an early morning in autumn is the mist hanging over the fields and a fine network of spider webs that drape over the grass, sparkling with dew. Some of these webs can reach a metre or so in diameter, but this is tiny compared to a spider discovered in Madagascar called Darwin's bark spider, which weaves webs that can measure up to 25 meters in diameter. That's the same length as your local swimming pool. In Greece, the exceptionally hot summer of 2018 resulted in a huge blanket of spider silk webbing covering 300 meters worth of ground that smothered plants and palm trees along the shoreline of a lagoon in Italiko. It was spun by Tetragnatha spiders. There are over 3,000 species of orb weaver spider in the world, including the common garden spiders of North America and Europe. These spiders construct flat webs consisting of concentric circles with spokes radiating from the center, a bit like a bicycle wheel, or an orb from which they get their name, but with cross threads as well. It's usually the female that builds the webs, which she uses to catch her prey. Spiders produce their silk thread from silk glands in their abdomen, where silk threads emerge from spinnerets, which are found on the rear of their body. The silk is both strong and extensible. In the European garden spider, the silk is typically 0.0015 millimeters in diameter, although several strands will often coalesce. Whilst it's incredibly fine, spider silk is also incredibly strong. It's one of the strongest natural fibers in the world. The properties of different silks vary. The tensile strength, that is the amount of stress a substance can withstand before it starts to break, is measured in something called gigapascals. Spider silks vary from 0.45 to 1.6 gigapascals. Depending on the alloy, this can be stronger than steel, which lies in the same range. The frame threads and radii are continually stretching and contracting as the twigs they're attached to sway back and forth in the wind. Capture spiral silk can increase its length by a whopping 33% without snapping. Okay, now listen carefully because here comes a lesson in web design. The hardest part of constructing a web is probably laying down the first thread. This is a horizontal thread on which the rest of the web hangs, so it's pretty important. The orb weaver spider starts by releasing a thread from her spinners. If she's lucky, the wind will carry this to a good spot where it then attaches. The spider walks carefully over the thread, strengthening it with another. This is repeated until the primary thread becomes reinforced and is strong enough to continue to the next step. The spider then hangs a Y-shaped thread below the primary one. These are the three radials, or arms of the web. Framing threads and more radials are constructed. Next, non-sticky circular construction spirals are made. The web is finally completed when the adhesive spiral threads are in place, and in some species, the non-sticky spirals removed. Spiders will often recycle their webs by eating the silk and reabsorbing the protein. So, let's just return for a moment to that scene I painted earlier on. The autumn field full of spiders' webs, glistening with dew. Well, what's even more striking about this scene of beauty is how the webs are mostly all intact. Despite birds flitting back and forth looking for insects, barely a web is broken. Now, as we've already learned, a spider's web is well known for its remarkable mechanical properties. But you might still expect that even the strongest webs would be damaged if a bird strikes them. But this doesn't happen nearly as often as you might imagine. So, why is this? Why don't birds collide with spider webs? Well, it turns out that the orb weavers decorate their webs with ultraviolet or UV reflective threads called stabilimenta. We humans can't see UV light, but importantly, birds can. And research has shown that these UV reflecting threads reduce the number of large birds that crash into their webs. Now, a German company has mimicked the UV pattern of an orb weaver spider, using it to coat glass windows and create a surface which deters birds from colliding into it and injuring themselves. It all began in the late 1990s when Dr. Alfred Meyerhuber, a German attorney and amateur naturalist, read an article in a magazine about orb weaver spiders and their use of stabilimenta. Alfred Meyerhuber was good friends with Hans-Joachim Arnold, the owner of Arnold Glass, a manufacturer of insulated glass products in Remshalden, Germany. Meyerhuber mentioned the article to his friend. He wondered whether the characteristics of spiders' webs could be transferred to glass and in the process reduce the number of bird collisions. Arnold was intrigued. With the popularity of expansive windows and glass walls in modern high-rise buildings and millions of birds being killed worldwide in collisions with window glass each year, there was no time to lose. The board of directors took a little convincing, but Arnold managed to persuade them and put his company to work, developing a product that would have the same UV reflecting qualities as spider silk. They worked with their sister company to develop a pattern coating for glass, which is only visible to birds that can detect UV light, and barely noticeable or perceptible to the human eye. The companies tested many different coating types and patterns. They found that a pattern coating, as opposed to one that was completely solid, made the contrast between the treated and untreated areas more intense. The coated parts reflected UV light, while the area sandwiched between the two layers of glass absorbed the UV light. The two functions together enhanced the reflective effect. Although the specific pattern of a spider's web had inspired the idea, to make the application practical, the team designed their own unique pattern for the window coating. After patenting the transparent UV coating in 2001, the company released its bird protection glass in 2006 as a commercial product. But the vertical lines of the UV reflective coating used in this product were sometimes perceptible. So, 3 years later, they released an improved product. This glass was independently tested by the Max Planck Institute for Ornithology in Germany. To do this, a variety of bird species were released inside a 9-meter tunnel with 2 glass panes at the far end. One was a control pane made of standard glass, and the other was a pane of the UV test glass. More than 1,000 test flights were carried out between 2003 and 2010. The birds were released and tried to fly out the tunnel through one of the perceived openings. To protect the birds from actually striking either pane, a net was suspended in front of them. The researchers recorded the flight path of each bird, and the results showed that the birds chose the path towards the standard glazing significantly more often than the UV test glass. The researchers concluded that this was because the UV marker was perceived as an obstacle by the birds. Since 2010, the company has worked with the American Bird Conservancy and takes part in their testing program. Now, I should mention that there are other products and other types of glass windows available which will deter birds. But in this instance, it's the orb weaver spider's web which inspired the design. So, next time you run away from a spider in the bath or prepare to flush it down the plug hole, just stop and spare it a thought. Do you really want to soak a creature which has helped save the lives of billions of beautiful birds? And in the next episode of 30 Animals That Made Us Smarter, we'll be hearing how bats and birds have inspired some impressive attempts at human flight. Thanks for listening.